This is Brent with Lykins Motorsports. You're looking at the tunnel port heads for our 397 cubic inch Dyno Mule that we're going to have coming up. This is the engine that I posted the video with the aluminum rods a week or so ago. These have been, these castings have been steel abraded. That's why they look, I'm going to try to, well, I'm going to knock all the valves out of these, but that's why they're so clean and nice looking. Had bronze valve guides put in so that I could use these custom aftermarket valves that are 5/16 stem. We went with SI on the intake valve and Manley on the exhaust valve, just because we're having trouble getting valves from different people. So the valves are 2 1/4 intake, 175 on the exhaust, and I'm getting ready to ship these out to Mr. Joe Crane. Joe has retired from head porting, but before he retired, he told me that he would do these heads for me, and he is graciously taking one last job. So these heads will be worked on by Mr. Joe, and the intention is to fill in the port and make it smaller, just because this is the size of it. So I can get 4 fingers in there. They're a big old honking port, and we don't need a big old honking port. The tunnel port heads are vintage 1967. They were only available over the counter. They were not available on any engine that came in a production vehicle. So these were used for some NASCAR stuff, for some GT40 stuff. And when you find a set, they've generally been whooped up on pretty good. You can see this one has been repaired in the bottom. It's got some weld, and I don't think that'll hurt anything, as we'll be filling in that, and Joe can make quick work of that. But brazed exhaust header bolt right there. So they've been, they've been around the block, and that's part of the nostalgia and part of the fun of owning these. I also had some inserts, thread inserts put in here, because we'll be running a little bit of spring pressure, and I'll be oiling through the push rod, so it doesn't, I don't have any restrictors or anything in there. The rocker arms are going to be a custom set that I had Harlan Sharp make for me. They are adjustable rockers, and needle bearing fulcrums, and they have cup adjusters. So the push rods will be a typical ball push rod, and these rockers will oil through the push rods. So for this engine, we're going to be using a billet core solid flat tappet camshaft. Bullet is making that for me right now. And we got some DLC coated tool steel solid flat tappet lifters that are coming. So it'll be a unique combination with the aluminum rods. And I have one other goodie that I'm working on that I think you guys will really enjoy when I show it to you. But first things first, I need to get some dimensions on these before I send them off. I need a chamber volume, and for giggles, I will pour an intake port just to see, or just to show you guys how cavernous these things are. They're big, but we'll get these poured up, and we'll look at some numbers. All right, so before we do any volume checking, we have to allow for the valves and everything to be sealed. So we're going to put some grease around the outside of the valve where it makes contact with the seat in the head, so that we don't get any leakage through that. Do those on both valves because we're going to end up checking the combustion chamber volume as well. Then once we get grease on there, what we'll do is take a couple of checking springs. Those cast iron heads are always heavy. We'll use just some regular valve locks and a couple of retainers that I have laying around. These are pretty high quality valves with a radius groove. One head has had a little bit of a port job done to it already. People always try to port these heads, and what I've found works the best is when you make the ports smaller. So that's what's going to happen with this one. But there's been a lot of smoothing and that kind of thing done. The reason we got such a discrepancy here is because this is a plus 100 thousandths retainer. This is a standard retainer. And also our intake valve is just a little bit taller than our exhaust valve. So I'll have to allow for that during assembly. But since we have everything sealed up, I'll get my plate set up and get our burette filled with fluid. And we'll get it poured. All right, so we're going to position, I'm going to get this wiped off. It's a little cloudy. We're going to position this, get a good seal on it. Then what you got to understand is that these, even on a standard head, you're going to run into port volume that's a lot greater than your 100 milliliter burette volume. So you're going to have to end up filling it up and then filling your burette back up and then going again. So even some of the ported trick flow heads that we do are around 178 cc's. I expect these to be quite large, quite larger than the trick flow heads. But you also have to take into account that a lot of the volume on an FE is built into the intake manifold too. So it's hard to make apples to apples comparisons between the FE and other engine families. You know, like on a small block Ford, you know, I would consider a 165 cc head fairly small. A 205 or a 220 or a 225 would be for, you know, some of your larger street and some of your race engines. So it's hard to make a comparison between engine families. But let's see what we can do here with our burette. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to empty. This is 100 milliliters, 100 cc's. I'm going to fill these up. Okay, there's 100, and then I'm going to fill my burette back up and hit it again. bit of an air bubble. Come on, baby. There we go. All right, so we got a little bit of sitting over the top there, but we are at, I don't know if you can see that, 194 cc's is what it took to fill that up. So a lot of your, it's not really huge, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's not as big as what I was expecting it to be, considering how big they look, but a lot of your aftermarket heads are a little bit smaller than that. But I'm going to check the other one because I think this one has had some smoothing done to it. And I want to do this other head that's still has a cast surface, but I'm going to check the combustion chamber volume on this one real quick. All right, we got our spark plug in there. Got to have that to get a good, accurate. Actually, you wouldn't even get a result if you didn't have the spark plug in there, because you'd just be pouring your liquid out the bottom. But we got our spark plug in there. We'll put some grease around the outside of this chamber, and then get our plate positioned. I like putting the hole up towards the very, very top and then angling the head so that any air wants to go to the top of where the hole is. Get my barrette filled back up and we'll check a chamber. Okay, here we go. Doing this for piston ordering purposes. And we are at 79.8 cc's. So that actually makes me feel pretty good. There's still a good thumbprint on these heads, and the thumbprint is a good indicator of how much a head has been cut. The other head has maybe just a little bit more of a thumbprint, but these heads are known for being, you know, large chamber. So the smaller the chamber, the smaller volume of the piston that I'll have to use to get some compression. And I was hoping that, you know, these heads weren't in the 90s or something like that, because that would require a lot of a dome, that sort of thing. So, so we've got our intake port measured on this one. We've got our combustion chamber measured on this one. We're going to switch to the other head. I'm going to make some recordings real quick to record these numbers, and then we'll check the other head. All right, so I just poured this intake port. I got 187.6 cc's. The other one was 194. I don't know if that was because, see, this one still has the natural cast finish on it. It doesn't look like a die grinder has been in here. The other one does. So I don't know if the difference is, well, there's about 7 cc's difference. I don't know if that was because it was ported or because I did something wrong with my air bubble on the other one. So what I'll probably do is redo the other one just to get a different figure. I am human. I make mistakes. So I'm going to go check that other one again after I pour the combustion chamber on this one. All right, so we got this chamber poured. Here's the differences that I'm seeing. And like I said, I'm going to go back and check this intake port volume one more time. But on the chamber on the other head, I'm getting 79.6. On this one, I'm getting 77.4. So 2.2 cc's difference. So we had these heads milled just to get a good baseline finish. What I'm going to do is I'll whack the other one another 10 thousandths. So that'll drop us, you get a cc for every 5 thousandths whack. So I'll drop 2 cc's here, and that will match all these up. So let me get this other, I'm gonna go back to the other head, check this intake port volume, just to make sure that I didn't do something funky when I had all that air bubble, and we'll see if our numbers match. All right, so I swept back to the other head and re-poured this intake port. It is exactly the same as I measured before, so I am not a moron. I did it correctly. But there was just, since this head's been whacked on, you can see how smooth it is inside. Somebody's thought that they would do this head a justice and make it bigger. But we're gonna make it smaller. And that'll get us some big horsepower for our 397, but this head's just a little bit too big. Mr. Joe will fix that, I'm sure. Next thing we need to do, so I can get some valve springs and that sort of thing ordered, is get this back up on the deck surface, and we'll measure some install heights for valve springs. All right, so I took a few minutes to get cleaned up. We're going to check the install heights on some valves here, just so I can get an idea of what valve springs I'm going to be using. One quick note about the intake port volume, just to compare these to some other cylinder heads. A 428 Cobra Jet head measures 156 cc's. The Trick Flow aftermarket heads measure around 174, 175. Our ported Trick Flow heads are 178. And then I think the CNC ported Robert Pond heads are about 208 cc's. So it just gives you a range of what's going on. But we're going to measure some install heights, and to do that we need our spring mic and locks to fit the valves, and a retainer. I have a couple of titanium retainers that I have laying around just to do this sort of thing. One is a standard height and one is a plus 100. Can you see the difference in them? Can you see that this one has a lot of dish in it? So the valve locks will be kind of what I would call sunk in comparison to where the spring would sit. So I'm going to use this one because it's a standard retainer. But this just goes to show you, what you have at your availability to, besides locks and shims, you also have, standard and plus 100 retainers. So this is our intake valve, or I'm sorry, exhaust valve. And we're just going to dial her in. And let's see here, 1900. I'm at 1960. I'm going to write that down. Now keep in mind that there is no locator there, so a locator will take 60 thousandths away from that. So I have to keep that in mind when I go to look for valve springs. I'll check this intake. $1,900, 2 inches, 2 inches and 25. So just a little bit of a discrepancy between these two, easily made up with a combination of shims, locks, whatever. But we are going to be running a billet steel solid flat tappet cam with some tool steel lifters. We're going to run about 200 pounds of seat pressure and a little over 500 pounds of over the nose pressure. And I'm going to try to find, I think the lift is somewhere around 750. So we'll try to find a small diameter valve spring that will fit those parameters. And the small diameter valve spring will allow me to run a small diameter retainer. So that'll cut our weight down. And I'll see what's available to us. Alright guys, I'm going to start cleaning up here. Just going to say that the next time you see these heads, they'll be modified for our usage. And I'm going to box these up today, and it is Labor Day weekend, so Monday is not available to ship, but we'll get these out the door on Tuesday. So Mr. Joe, if you're watching, you'll probably see these next week, I would imagine. Alright guys, I appreciate you very much watching the channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that so that you don't miss out on this build or the other builds that I have coming through. We are still waiting on our crankshaft to be touched up for our 289 build, and then I can get that one together. I did get notification from Racetech that our our 302 tunnel port motor, the pistons have shipped, so I hope to have those next week, and then I can get the crank ground are balanced. I'm struggling with English language today. Time for a second cup of coffee, I do believe. But then we'll be able to get that one going. Oh, and I'll see if I can post up a picture of the 302 tunnel port intake. I sent that to my good friend Bobby Crumpley at in Texas. He has a vapor blasting company, and I'll show you how excellent that intake looks now. And I would suggest that if you have any intake manifolds or aluminum parts or whatever that you would like to see restored back to factory finish, that you would give him a call. But I appreciate you guys, and I thank you, and I hope you have a good long weekend, and I'll talk to you next week.